Hello, my friends, and happy Friday. I am so excited to be here today. I have a kind of a deep topic today. I really want to talk about the difference between reacting to something that happens to us and responding to something that happens to us. And I'm talking about this in the context of something that is negative or triggering or, annoying or, something bad that happens to us. I'm talking about that in that context. It might seem that these two words, reacting and responding, are very similar, and they are, and even the dictionary doesn't really distinguish between them. But I want to suggest that there's a huge difference between these two words. And it's something I explore a lot with my clients, this difference between reacting to a situation and responding to a situation. So to me, reacting to a negative circumstance or to a triggering person or even a disruptive event in our life is saying, doing, or behaving without thinking. So it's that initial urge we feel when something happens to us and acting on that urge without consideration of anything else, in particular, without considering the fallout or the consequences of our reaction. So think about a little toddler and how they react to the world around them. If you've ever seen a toddler with a toy and when another child grabs that toy, what happens? That one toddler has a meltdown. They scream or they cry or they flail their little hands around. That's pure reaction. They had something, it was taken away, their brain got scared, and they reacted out of fear, which manifested in a crying fit or in a temper tantrum. And I'm sure we've all seen adults who react this way to things being taken away from them. And that's not really pleasant to watch, is it? Or at the very least, it's super awkward when we experience that with adults. So reacting is primal. It's what our brains are programmed to do. Our brains are meant to keep us safe. Remember, I've talked about this before. Back in the caveman days, being able to react quickly and instinctively to dangers in the environment is what kept us safe out there in the wilderness. And for sure, we need to be able to react to things even in modern day life. So think about, grabbing your child from an oncoming car or fighting back if you get attacked. We need to be able to have those reactions. But I'm not talking about those types of circumstances right now. I'm talking about sort of non-life threatening situations and how we want to be when something triggering or negative or bad happens to us. So here's something to consider. Reacting to something without thought and without intention means we're not in control of our brain. We're ceding agency of our actions to our impulses. We're outsourcing our behavior to our primal brains. Just think about that for a minute. Do you really want to outsource your behavior and actions? Do you really want to give up control over your own integrity, over what is going to be the best for you and your higher self? It might feel good in the moment or in the second to react, like throw something at the wall or tell somebody off. But that kind of good feeling goes away very quickly, doesn't it? And we're left feeling not very good. We're left feeling maybe a bit of regret or a little bit of embarrassment, or maybe just even like really out of alignment with who we are and who we want to be. Can you think back to a time and maybe that happened to you when you reacted to something and then regretted it later? Yeah, me too. I remember a few months ago, I was feeling super frustrated with my computer. I wasn't in a good mood. I don't know. There was just lots of things going on for some reason. I just wasn't not in control of my reactions at all. And I literally threw my laptop down on the floor, like slammed it down on the floor. And that was just a pure reaction. And yeah, the consequences of that were that I had there's a little ding on the floor. I felt really bad. I knew that that was not how I wanted to respond in a moment of frustration. So, we're all human and it happens. And I think we go on and we learn from that. Because I do 100% believe that we have agency over our actions. We have agency over our behaviors. We have agency over our language and what we say. We have agency over our thoughts. And we do have agency and control over our reactions to what is happening to us. And when we take control, when we become intentional about how we want to behave and become intentional about what we want to say and how we want to say it, then that is called responding. And that's the difference between reacting to something and responding to something. Now, I'm not saying this is easy. It's actually really challenging, and it takes a lot of practice and a lot of awareness. But overall, I personally think I'd rather be in control than out of control. Do you agree with me? And you know what? The cool thing is that we can learn to do this. We can learn to be aware and take control of how we respond to things around us. I'm reminded of something that Viktor Frankl said. So if you know, Viktor Frankl is the author of many books, but most notably, The Man's Search for Meaning. And he was a survivor of a Holocaust concentration camp. So while in that concentration camp, in what was obviously a living hell, he realized that his thoughts, his response to his circumstances, was the one thing that can never be taken away from him. He realized he had agency over his thoughts and responses, and he knew that no one could take that away from him, despite taking away everything else in his life. He said something really powerful. He said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So I'm going to say that again, because I just think there's so many gold nuggets in there. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That space between stimulus and response is so infinitesimally small, like it's so tiny, so small. And yet there is enough space for us to have the power to decide on our response. Or we can choose to ignore that space and just react. But then according to Frankl, we lose an opportunity for growth and for freedom. And who doesn't want to grow and be free? To me, growth and freedom means learning about ourselves. It means expanding into the best version of who we are meant to be. It means allowing the gifts of the situation to come to us. And there are gifts, trust me, in everything. The growth and freedom also allows us it frees us up from control of our base emotions and primal reactions have over us. So to me, that's a really wonderful, amazing gift, knowing that we have a choice about how we live our lives no matter what. So how can we learn to take control of our reactions and turn them into more intentional responses? Well, number one is always awareness. Awareness of what triggers us, awareness of our values, awareness of how we want to show up in the world every day, awareness that how we respond creates a ripple effect in our lives and in the lives of those around us. And then we practice. I mean, life is always putting us into situations or in front of people that test us. And therefore, those tests teach us, or at least there's an opportunity for learning there. So we practice being aware, and then we become super honest with ourselves about our typical reactions. Now, being honest with ourselves is challenging, but also really required if we want to gain control over our actions. I know for me, I mentioned before, I tend to react with frustration or passive aggressiveness, or I tend to lash out to people. And that's a really hard thing to acknowledge about yourself, but it's super critical in being aware. It's not who I want to be, but it is sort of that dark shadow side, and sometimes it does come out. We need to decide how we want to be and who we want to be in these situations that happen to us in life, and then really work at it when we are triggered. Something that helps in clarifying this is asking yourself how you want to feel after a triggering encounter or after something negative happens to you. I know for me, I really want to feel calm, collected, at peace with myself. I want to feel articulate. And I won't if I react in anger or sarcasm. I won't feel those things. I'll feel regret and I'll feel sadness that I didn't really connect with who I want to be. I've heard clients say that they want to feel empowered, confident. They want to feel like a leader. They want to feel strong. How do you want to feel? And what would make you feel that way? What language, actions, or responses do you need to use in order to feel the way that you want? It's also really important to know and really live our values. And again, you've heard me say this over and over again because values are so critical in our lives. They're our compass, they're our guiding light in so many ways. including how to take agency over our reactions or responses. Most critically, when life throws us a major curveball or we have a bombshell dropped on us. It's easy every day if things are just kind of ticking along, but when something really overwhelming happens or something really triggering happens or some situation that's out of our control happens to us, that's when our values really become important to us and help guide us into how we want to be in that situation, how we want to show up. But you know what the most critical piece of all is? And it's super simple. Again, it's not easy, but it's super simple. And that is tapping into the power of breath. Taking a breath between the stimulus and between the response, being aware enough to do this lengthens that space and therefore allows us more time to respond in the way that we want to respond. So taking a breath or taking a few breaths allows us to stay present in a situation. And that's really what we want. We want to stay present with what's going on. That's how we stay in control and not let our primal minds take over. Listen, I've dealt with death, being through a divorce, and being fired from 2 jobs. And with every of those situations, I've learned about responding versus reacting. And I've learned how to stay present, recognize the primal brain wanting to take over, and then being very intentional about that space between the stimulus and the response, being very intentional about how I want to be in that situation. We've all just been through a pandemic, and that's caused massive disruption in our life. How did you react or respond? Or how do you continue to react to respond? Because it's an ongoing situation. I want to remind you that we can change how we choose to respond at any time. Just because we've chosen to react a certain way in the past doesn't mean that we can't choose to respond in a different way in the current moment or in the future. We all have a choice about that. Once we're really aware of how we're reacting and that we would rather be responding with control and with personal power, then we can change how we are being and who we're being in the world. Knowing and being aware of our primal brain and deciding to not give into that fear that puts us into fight or flight. It's so interesting that when we're aware of what our brain does, then we can stop it and we can create a different thought. We can decide to have a different thought when we're really aware. The more we do that, the more we pattern new neural pathways in our brain, so that when something else, big or small, happens in our life, we have the awareness, we have the inner knowing of who we want to be, we have the gift of breath, and we have the power of staying in the present moment to help us respond in a way that is in perfect alignment with who we really are. So thank you for letting me share my thoughts with you today, and I hope they make you feel inspired, hopeful, a little bit less alone, and I hope you learned something today or a new way of thinking about the difference between reacting and responding. I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts about this and how you choose to respond or react to things and what you're learning about situations in your life, and how you stay in the present moment and how you show up in a way that's really in alignment with you. So let me know in the comments or reach out. And just a reminder that this is what I do. I help people clarify what's important to them and how to live into their values. My mission is to help people shine their light more brightly, because then together we can really create some really massive positive impact in the world. So, if you're looking to clarify your values, if you're looking to work out how to respond versus react, if you're looking to clarify what's really important in your life or anything else that you're struggling with in terms of purpose or meaning or your job or relationship, reach out and schedule a discovery call with me, and I'd love to chat with you. So have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you again, and we'll see you soon, my friends. Take care.